Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out, let people know I've gone live as late as I am tonight. It'll be a little bit of a bedtime story, possibly, or maybe not. Maybe we'll just go into our cards. I was just laughing at myself. Actually, I was laughing at myself. I turned around and I looked at this big pile of camping gear all ready to go for my trip on Sunday. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what 63 little old ladies go off and do this? I don't think very many. And I just kind of laughed at myself because, sometimes I think I'm 20. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing. But I have to keep in mind that I'm not going to feel as amazing as I do now ever again. So I have to enjoy myself. I have to go off and do these crazy things that make me happy, that make me feel like I'm living my best life, make me feel like I'm creating my best life. And that's what's most important, that I'm just unique and doing the very best that I can, creating the best life that I can, understanding life is what happens while we're making other plans. In actuality, I was cleaning up my desk and I left this here. It was my dad's plaque. He had it on the wall beside his chair. My dad was a very thoughtful man. He usually, when he was home, he was sitting in his chair with a cup of tea, reading a book. And these days, it's a little bit different. We're all online, but in the 60s and 70s, if you wanted information, you had to read books or go to seminars or workshops. There was no other way to connect with people who were like minded to you. Here in this digital age, this age of AI learning that we're in, oh my goodness, I have been so lucky to have bumped into some of the characters that I have. There would have been no other opportunity if it wasn't for this age of AI learning to be able to have these amazing insights and these amazing people that know so much about things that I had never heard of in my entire life. And it sometimes is just that one piece of content, that one idea, that one conversation, that one person to come into your life, even if it's just for a few minutes. And they might not even recognize how they impacted you in your life. I'm just going to take my notifications out. They might not ever know how they impacted you in your life. And you might never know how they impacted you in your life. But it is a gift nonetheless, in the giving and in the receiving. Oh my goodness, I enjoy giving the gifts as much as I love receiving them. That was a actually a gift I learned from my sister. Her favorite movie was, what was it? Um, it's a Wonderful Life at Christmas time, because she lived her life that way, doing kindnesses for other people, making it so that they could have a life that would have been better than if they had, handled things on their own. That's the good thing. I don't myself mind controlling or narcissistic people if they can understand boundaries and if they truly are an expert in what they know. It's the ones who just like this and know nothing. Those are the ones that I have the problem with. But I've known so many strong minded, we'll call them strong minded people who just had their stuff together and really were experts in their field. In fact, I learned from a diagnosed narcissist. He is actually a professor. He teaches psychologists, and he was diagnosed with narcissism. And I love to learn by other people's perspective, and to actually have my lessons come from somebody right from the horse's mouth. That's insight that you could never receive anywheres else, right? So it does take all kinds to make the world. I recognize that, but we just have to find better ways to be tolerant of each other. Sometimes these big changes that in the end might not be so big and scary, but because they're so different and so new that we're kind of standoffish when it comes to holding our hands up and say, okay, I agree, I'm in, right? It's usually majority rules, but if we can't find our voices, how can we hold the majority up? How can we help hold them accountable in their decision making, right? So I don't mind moving in majority rules. I really don't. I believe that the minority will always hold the majority accountable, but the minority does have to be brave enough to step forward when it's called upon, when it's really important that somebody shows up with the skills and the understanding and the evidence that something is true or something could be done, or whatever is being said or being projected is a worthwhile endeavor, or it's not. And that's the hardest part when you go against the agreement, right? When you stick your hand up and say, when that preacher says, does anybody have a problem with this couple joining together in holy matrimony, and somebody actually does stand up and find that voice and say, oh my goodness, I loved her since she was 12 years old, and, right? Sometimes it's in that keeping things to ourselves, keeping our feelings to ourselves, keeping our understandings to ourselves, not being brave enough to be the person that we should be, or to have that voice that could make the difference, the 100% difference in somebody's life. You could be, missing out on that true love, that person you were supposed to spend the rest of your life with. But because that preacher said, does anybody have a problem with this couple being joined in holy matrimony? And you just did not say anything. You just stood off like a wallflower and you just lost the love of your life. Sometimes it's going against the grain. That's one of the big lessons that I learned in life, right? Because I was always being dictated to. I come from a family, a very dynamic family, right? Where every single member in that family thought they were right, right? And it's really hard to keep everybody happy and keep yourself happy at the same time when you're being directed at by so many different people with so many different ideas, right? I get it. It's hard sometimes to have that voice, to be brave enough to stand up against something that's not right. I did it for myself. I It was an opportune moment that I was able to do that, and when I did that at that one moment, my whole life kind of changed. I wasn't woke up to any of these ideas, but I recognized that, I was the only one who was going to stick up for myself in most instances. And I had to be brave that way, right? That I wasn't going to turn the other cheek in every instance. Sometimes, right, we let things slide. right? Sometimes we let things slide with a little bit of course correction, right? Little bit of explanation. But sometimes we just let things slide over and over and over again. And that's just giving somebody else the permission to go off and do that to somebody else, whatever mishap or misbehaving that they were doing, the wrong, right? But if we can't be brave enough to step in when it's necessary, then we're not serving anybody, right? Because it is in the witnesses, for the most part, that we have an opportunity to inspire and be the evidence, right? Be that little bit of inspiration, that little bit of motivation for somebody, be that evidence for somebody that it can be done, that somebody is willing to come forward, right? Yeah. I know for myself, I grew up being taught not to stir the pot. And I also understood things could be really a lot easier on myself if I could keep my mouth, or I could be invisible or a little bit of a wallflower or something, right? But at the same time, then I feel that I would have to take some of the blame if something didn't turn out well in somewheres where I was supposed to stand up. And, I would have to say, for a lot of my life, that was the person that I was. But for a lot of my life, too, I found that courage to have a little bit of a voice, if for nobody else, for myself, right? I think it's a big part of why I was invited to the party because, I was that little bit of a steward for myself, that I understood myself. I understood where I got things right. I understood where I got things wrong. And I understood, right? The other way around with other characters, the rights and the wrongs. And I would have, right? I didn't want to, but if I had to, I would, right? Because, you let somebody get away with something, that's just giving them permission to go off and do that same thing to somebody else. And we don't learn that way, right? We just keep passing that privilege, if that's what you want to call it, down to the next generation. And nothing gets resolved in that. I don't know that was coming from. It's for somebody. I'm just going to have a little sip of my coffee here, wet my lips. I don't know who that was with because it really wasn't a topic today in any any way. But maybe it's in that little way of being genuine, because lots of times too people suffer in their struggles and in their pain and their heartbreak, and they just struggle all by themselves. And nobody would know because, lots of times we're just expected to be strong. We're just expected to keep it at home, right? Or just to keep it to yourself until you have a quiet moment that you can just kind of work with that. And that's really, really hard, especially for somebody who's trying to live that genuine life, right? To be the person that they are from one moment to the next. But lots of times we don't want to bother people with our problems, and then we keep our problems to ourselves, and we can choke on that, you know? And not everybody out there is sensitive enough to pick up on somebody else's sadness or grief or discomfort or struggle, right? Not everybody is. A lot of people, right, are. That's just the way that this world is moving right now. But in the moment, most people are just taking care of themselves. And, unless somebody is brave enough to say, I'm having a bad day, or, this didn't work out for me, or this is going on in my family, sometimes it's just having somebody there, right? Maybe this we touched on a little bit yesterday. Maybe it's just having somebody there that kind of understand what somebody's going through, but not everybody is sensitive that way, right? We're moving towards that, but it's in rubbing with each other. It's in interacting with each other. It's being social and being part of communities that we get to better learn how to be better human beings. And that's the truth. We're just stepping into it in a way that we're just able to understand it a little bit better. I think big part of us all waking up to all these ideas in this moment in time, it's specifically because it is time, right? It's been brought to the attention that, maybe we can be a little bit more understanding of some of these topics, that maybe we really could make some serious movement, right? This is going to make the process a lot easier and a lot faster, I think, right? But it's all experimental, right? This AI learning stuff has only been gone for like 20 years. We've only been into it for like 20 years. And look how far we've come with it already, right? So, you know, I'm not calling it quits yet, right? I'm curious. I'd like to stick around and see how far we can go just in even my lifetime, right? This is so amazing. I go back to when I was a little kid. I go back to the 60s and 70s and 80s, and I look at my life, I look at others' lives, I look at my dynamic family, I look at the problems, I look at what I get right, what I get wrong, what other people get right, what other people get wrong. But one thing I can tell you is always innovation, right? Whether it was getting the TV, right? It was in the late 50s when TV started coming out. We got our TV fairly early, right? I remember watching Man step foot on the moon, Dad waking us up, and all of us huddled around the TV to see Man walk on the moon, right? Innovation. And things have changed so much. They're taking like almost like daily flights, right? Up into space. And one day we might have places and stations and new planets, maybe man made planets that we've created for ourselves in the anticipation that, right? We're just moving forward, and this is how we're going to evolve. But because we understand a little bit better now, right? Maybe the idea is that maybe we can all wake up to some of these ideas. And yeah, it'll be difficult because we're all in different stages of our evolution, right? For lots of different reasons. But if everybody needs to wake up, wouldn't it be amazing that there were a few people who knew what was going on that could help people better maneuver or untangle those wires so that, you know, there isn't truly a crazy town going on? Meaning, right, we're not quite there yet. We are still selfish and warring and unkind sometimes, but we have a lot of amazing traits in that little bit of movement we've made just even since the 60s, right? And that's the truth. Okay, you guys, we're just going to go into a card, I say, for a couple of days. Oh, thank you so much for coming in. You're a real jewel, lady. I'm happy I stumbled onto you. Well, I'm happy you stumbled onto my channel too. When we come back from my trip, I'm going off a line at the end of this week. I'm going on a trip that I do every single year. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to do this trip. This year, it was just a miracle that it happened out for me. But I'll be filming all my adventures. One of the things I love to do is I love to explore provincial parks and I'm going to Ontario, and I have 4 different provincial parks this year. And yeah, I film my adventures, and I do a little bit of forest bathing for a week, and I store up on a little bit of Mother Nature, and we try to make that last throughout the year, because it's in this moment, it's something I'm able to do and go off once a year. But there is that hope, that is that anticipation that when I retire, I'll live that RV life, possibly. That would be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool. Hello, Eugene. I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter day Saints, and I love you. Aw, thank you so much. It's very kind of you. For So kind of you to say. I am non denominational, but when I woke up to some of these ideas, you know, mindset helped me out so much, especially being so non denominational and not having a religious or spiritual idea or direction to go in, that I rooted in mindset, and it served me so well. And it'll make it possible for me too to, right, hang out with all kinds of amazing denominations, a whole bunch of amazing. It takes all kinds to make the world. I truly believe that, and I'm so grateful that you popped in. And is that what denomination? Can I ask you, dear, what that is? Is that spiritual, or is that I guess it's religious, right? Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints sounds almost evangelical. I'm not sure though. I dip my toes in different religions only for the fact and spiritual ideas, because it's important to be able to find a connection to people. And when we have these conversations where we're not really on the same plane in our understandings, that we can find a kind place where we can sit together and keep each other company. And I'm grateful, my Christian friends who kind of hang out with me on my Sunday night live. They were all praying for my sister, and she flew through that heart bypass that she had to go through. It was a scary situation for her, but I'm determined to say that it was my Christian friends that pulled her through with all those amazing prayers that they held out for her the whole time during that process. She's doing so great in her recovery. It's allowing me to go on to this trip this year that I didn't think I was going to be able to go on, right? But things are looking up all the way around, even though, right, you might not think so, but sometimes you got to make a mess to clean a mess. And that's a truth. And when you throw things up in the air and you make a mess, sometimes it's just frustrating just looking at it, isn't it? Right? But once you start hacking away at it, gives you something to do, whistle while you work. And at the end of it is that reward of something clean and organized or better understood. My mouth is really drying out tonight. I've just really been into the fluids today. Um, oh, thank you. We are, right? We are. 100% we are powerful, but we are more powerful as a whole than we are separate. And it's just my hopes that we're just going to better get along. Why? Because, right, whoever, whatever, believes that it's time for us to start to learn to better get along. And that's the truth. Okay, you guys, I am poo pooed tonight. I'm going to just pick a card, go into it for a couple of minutes, call it a night. We got a couple of busy days of getting ready for my trip. I hope everybody's having an amazing week. I hope everybody has been thinking to themselves about a goal or a dream or something that you want for yourself or your family to accomplish, and start putting it into action. The smallest way. If you have that idea right now, right? Find a way to get a little action into getting that ball rolling. Even if it's just getting out the notepad and starting with those notes, you gotta start somewhere. Just put that action in to your ideas. We should all be into our change right now, right? And you might not have it down packed, but as you're moving, you'll get redirected in that 100%. Okay, here's the card. Truth. The truth is, we all fail in ourselves and in others. The truth is in the intent. It is, and I'm going to have to say too, being highly sensitive, being empathic. I don't know for you guys, but feeling intent has been a gift in my life, and it has been a bit of a nemesis in my life because not everybody sees your truth that the way that you see it. And lots of times it's in our explaining or pointing it out or trying to, say, can't you see it my way? Can't you see that this is the way it is? And we waste so much energy into getting other people to see things the way that we see them, right? The only thing that we can do is just be ourselves. And if people don't see things the way that you see them, if you're not part of that majority, it's best not to waste that energy, right? But at the same time, somebody has to step forward, right? And I'm not somebody who turns the other cheek, because I do understand when I turn the other cheek, I'm giving somebody permission to go off and do that to somebody else. So possibly I might be the one that has to step away. But when I step away, there will be a conversation, right? And there'll be eyes on that problem, so that if something does go array, if something does break down, if that problem is still consistently happening, right, they'll say, oh my goodness, right, I remember Cindy saying a little bit something about this. Maybe we better pay a little bit closer eye on this, because this could turn into a problem, right? And, for me, that's bringing up that courage, right? Because when you stand up to something, you're not usually making a friend in that, are you? But at least you can say you tried, and you're sticking up for the small man. And you never know, that small man, more often than not, is yourself. And there's nothing wrong with sticking up with yourself. Just understand that sometimes when you put that energy to say, hey, can't you just see, did you see that? Nobody's going to see that. The only one who's going to see that or understand that is yourself. And if that's what you need to feel like you matter, right? I think that's pretty amazing. I would say those other parts of you would be awfully proud to know that they have somebody who's such a good steward that's watching out for themselves, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong in that. Okay, let me just uh, read that one more time. Truth. Truth, we all fail in ourselves and in others. The truth is in the intent. So if you are highly sensitive, right? Lots of people say unkind things. Lots of times people bring you down because they're feeling down themselves and they just want a little bit of company. They don't want somebody all cheery and happy, right? So when we look at not turning the other cheek, you have to really be able to understand and recognize the intent and be certain, right? Is somebody going for the jugular, or is somebody just having a bad day? Or is there arthritis flaring up? Or did somebody just yell at them, right? And so we have to feel people out before we, right? Because we fail others too. And if you can make a little bit of allowance for somebody else, maybe when we mess up, somebody will give us a little bit of allowance too and actually feel the intent. We all hurt people, we all disappoint each other, right? We all go for the jugular one time, once in a while, and that's the truth too. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. The truth is, we all fail in ourselves and in others, but the truth is in the intent. Have a great night. We'll see you.